In this lecture, I will be discussing about management by objectives. Let me discuss about what we have in the previous lecture. We discussed about how managers take decisions. So, an effective decision can be taken when there is a consensus and there is an involvement of all employees in the organization, or how to effectively set a goal. So, the contents which we will be discussing here is meaning of objectives, nature of objectives. We will define how an objective is being set using guidelines and management by objective in more details, evolving concepts of management by objective and a systems view or systems approach to management by objective. Then what is the process of defining or process of MBO, management by objective, and what are key result areas and how it is applied in various industries, application of MBO in performance management system. The learning outcomes is to develop a familiarity with the key concepts used in management by objective and to understand the practical application of MBO in all organizations. So, we will start with the basic definition of what is planning. As we all know, planning is an important step in important management function. Planning involves selecting missions, purpose and objectives and the actions to achieve them. It requires decision making, and as we have studied various ways of decision making, individual manager takes decisions which is succumb to biases. There are some shortcuts in decision making. So, it is always wise enough to take views of others or opinion of others or consensus in decision making. So, with this perspective we will be learning about management by objective, how a goal can be set and what are the steps in implementation of goals. So, that is choosing from among the alternatives, future courses of actions can be defined. What are the various types of plans? Mission or purpose identifies the basic purpose of an enterprise or agency, and objectives or goals are the end results or ends towards which any activity is aimed. Strategy is the determination of the basic long term objective of an enterprise and adoption of courses of action and allocation of resources necessary to achieve these goals. The policies are general statements or understandings that guide decision making, and various types of like procedures are the plans that establish a required method of handling future activities. Similarly, the rules spell out specific required actions or which allow no discretion, and programs are a complex of goals, policies, procedures, rules, tasks, assignments and a step by step plan or steps to be taken, resources to be employed and other elements which are necessary to carry out a given course of action. And the budget is a statement of expected results expressed in numerical terms. So, with this background we will start what are the steps taken in planning. There are say 8 steps. A person must be or a manager must be aware of opportunities while planning and establish goals or objectives, develop premises, determining alternative courses of actions, evaluate alternative courses, select a course and formulate plans, quantify plans by budgeting. So, these steps can be executed. One important point is how to set objectives or goals, which we will be discussing in more details in management by objective. Let us discuss about how a manager identifies opportunities in the business. What is opportunity? A manager need to first, when they initiate a plan or they propose a purpose for any business, they must know what is the business environment, whether it is conducive, favorable to initiate the business or not. What are the factors in the business environment which may hinder in the accomplishment of goals. So, these things must be kept in mind while initiating any enterprise, while starting any business or a new venture. Opportunity identification, who is the competitor, what are the strengths and weaknesses of competitors, competitor intelligence, that is knowledge about the competitors, resources, competitors strengths, competitors say technology and the products and services. So, the marketer or the manufacturer or the business enterprise must be aware of all these opportunities, and then he should start his venture. So, we will discuss about what is objective. Let us discuss about the fundamental definition of objective. Objectives are important end results towards which organizations and individuals are directed. An objective is a verifiable one when at the end of the period one can determine whether or not the objective has been achieved. So, it can be always verified time and again whether, and it can be compared whether the goals are achieved or not. So, what are the various types of objectives? Objectives can be verifiable or quantitative. They can also be non-verifiable or qualitative objectives. So, let us differentiate between what is a verifiable or quantitative objective, what is a qualitative or non-verifiable objective. Quantitative, as the name goes, quantitative means something which is objective, and qualitative means something which is very subjective. The quantitative goal is measured by a metric or statistics. It deals with numbers, for example, length, height, volume, weight, speed, time, temperature, humidity, sound, level, cost, measures, etc. Non-verifiable or qualitative objectives, these are very subjective measures like communicating more effectively. So, what do you mean by communicating more effectively? It is subjective, relative. More effective, or it is a kind of a fuzzy word or an abstract word which cannot be quantified. There is no quantification. You cannot associate, not quantified, cannot associate any number. Number cannot be associated. So, this matrix cannot be well defined. Learning to better adapt to change, better adapt or lesser adaptation to change, working collaboratively or less collaboratively with your team, and so on, deals with certain descriptions and no quantification. Data can be observed, but cannot be measured. For example, color, texture, smell, taste, satisfaction. So, these are all examples of qualitative objectives. Now, we will discuss about some examples in more details. What is a quantitative objective? Quantitative objective, otherwise what is a quantitative objective? Quantitative objective is something which is verifiable. Quantitative objective is something which is verifiable, which can be associated with numbers. For example, to achieve a return on investment of 12% at the end of the current fiscal year. So, there is a quantity which is defined, there is a timeline which is defined. The end of the year is a timeline and quantity is 12%. To issue a 2-page monthly newsletter beginning on 1st of July, again there is a timeline and amount of say a 2-page monthly report. So, there is a number which is defining the task. Beginning July 2005, involving not more than 40 working hours of preparation time after the first issue. So, there is a constraint which is guided by some timeline, and there is a quantifiable there is a quantity which is being measured. To increase production output by 5% by 5th of or 31st of December 2005 without additional cost and while maintaining the current quality level. To design and conduct a 40-hour in-house training program on the fundamentals of management to be completed by 1st of October 2005 involving not more than 200 working hours of management development staff and with at least 90% of say 90% of 100 managers passing the examination is being specified. So, there is a specific quantity, there is a specific deadline which is mentioned in a quantitative objective which is also which can be verified. The next example is to install a computerized control system in the production department by 31st of December 2005 requiring not more than 500 working hours of systems analysts and operating with not more than 10% downtime during the first 3 months nor 2% thereafter. So, in all these examples a well defined objective fact is being given. Next we move on to non verifiable or qualitative objective. For example, to make a reasonable profit. As I discussed earlier, something which is abstract in nature, abstract, subjective, which does not quantify, is called qualitative goal. To improve communication, to improve. So, the word improvement is a subjective measure. To improve productivity, to develop better managers. So, better to develop something in a better manner. Customer satisfaction. Satisfaction is again something which cannot be quantified. So, what are these? These are qualitative goals, otherwise they are called qualitative goals. So, what are the guidelines for setting objectives? In management by objective, we need to set goals which are verifiable, which are quantitative, which can be measured, which can be realistic and which can be attained on a specific timeline. So, there must be some guidelines for setting the objectives, and now we will discuss if the objectives meet the criteria, we can write a tick mark or a plus sign in the box at the right statement. If they do not, then we can eliminate or we can put a cross mark in the box. So, we must have a kind of check box kind of say measures or check box or to set objectives. So, whenever managers set any objective, they need to also check, they need to verify whether they are able to meet the goals or not. So, that will give them a feedback of what goals have been achieved, what goals are still or yet to be achieved. So, we will have kind of say I will discuss about some guidelines which managers can set. Do the objectives cover the main features of my job or my task? Is the list of objectives too long? If so, can I combine some objectives together? So, you can put it say cross mark or you can put a tick mark. So, if you move with a kind of a guideline, then probably it will be easier for the manager to attain the objectives in a timely manner. So, are the objectives verifiable? That is, will I know at the end of the period whether or not they have been achieved? Do the objectives indicate quantity? If yes, how much? Quality? How well or specific characteristics? What is the timeline? What is the cost involved? Are these objectives challenging or they are only reasonable? Yes, reasonable. So, are priorities being assigned to the objectives? Is there any kind of ranking or weightage being given to the objectives which the manager is going to achieve or which the manager would be having in his say in his planning stage? Next is, does the set of objectives also include improvement objectives or personal development objectives? What is the nature of the objective? Whether it is only to improve or it is for personal development. Are the objectives coordinating with those of the managers, other managers and organizational units? Is the objective associated with other objectives or it is only to be initiated and done by the individual alone? So, these things need to be taken or these things need to be assessed from time and again. Are they consistent with the objective of my superior, my department or the company at large? Have I communicated the objective to all those people who are involved in the process? Are they need to be informed? So, are the shortcomings, are the short term objectives consistent with the long term aims, long term objective of the organization? Is the assumption underlying the objective clearly identified and are the objectives expressed clearly and are they in written format? Is it only a verbal statement or there is any kind of written statement? So, we need to check again. And do the objectives provide timely feedback? What is the instant feedback being received on attainment of the objectives from the managers or from the from peers, so that I can take any necessary corrective measure? Are my resources adequate enough and authority sufficient for achieving the objective? Have I given the individuals who are expected to accomplish objectives a chance to suggest their objectives? Do my subordinates have control over aspects for which they are assigned responsibility? So, with this we will move on to what are the characteristics of sound objectives or smart objectives. So, what is a SMART goal? A goal which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time bound is always called a SMART goal, which can be measured, which is smart, measurable, attainable or reasonable, realistic and time bound, because it will not create an adverse impact on the manager. It will not, if a goal is SMART goal, it will rather motivate subordinate to perform and not demotivate him or her or not create any unrealistic pressure, unnecessary pressure, or say it will not create any kind of the person who is executing the task will not be there will not be any stress or burnout. So, what is SMART goal? Let us define. SMART goal, the word S means specific. State what you will do, use action words. Specific goals are those which can be converted into actionable goals which can be attained. Measurable means there can be some matrices or data targets. I will explain each of them in more details. Achievable means within the scope of the project, possible to accomplish or attainable. Relevant is makes sense within your job function, which is relevant to the specific task which is being assigned. Improves the business. Overall, this relevant goal helps in improving the business, improvement of the task, and the goal should be time bound. So, what is involved? the goal should be, there should be action words or some small targets specific. That means there should be some specificity in attainment of objective, like what we discussed earlier. Taking the example of certain goals that we discussed earlier, to achieve a return on investment of 12% at the end of 1 year, at the end of current fiscal year. So, it is very very specific that this, the target is should be in return ROI of 12% and not 15% or 20% or more. It is very specific. So, goal should be specific at the end of one financial year, one fiscal year. Had it been 24% at the end of 2 years or 5 years, so the goal would have been, would have defined a different timeline. So, what we discussed now is specificity of the goal. State what you will do through action words and not the fuzzy words. Fuzzy words would have been, say, more or less, the target, some target or few targets, some words which will be abstract in nature. But when you are making a specific goal, you are defining by certain numbers. Now, moving on to what is measurable. Measurable means provides a way to evaluate what can be measured, what are the action, what are the matrices. Matrices means, say suppose if I am saying a particular quantity, what is exactly the weight of the product. So, you are say either you can say 50 grams or 250 grams, you are measuring by a specific number. There are certain matrices, some attributes, matrices or data targets, some target points. So, this will give you the quantifiable assessment of the goal, and then achievable, which should not be very unrealistic. If had I said, suppose we want 89% of the ROI by the end of the current fiscal year, the goal should have been something very unrealistic and which would create unnecessary stress on the manager, which would lead to stress and which would lead to burnout. It would have an adverse impact on the health of the individual. So, when we set goals, the goal should be something which can be attained, something which is realistic, not something which is a very imaginative type of goal. So, with this we would move further to what is relevant. Relevant means it makes sense within the job capacity, within the job conditions or job function of an individual, and with these it will help overall improvement of the business. Now, the time constraint should also be considered, time bound. There should be some time limit for attainment of goals. State when you will get it done, whether by the end of 2 years or whether by the end of 1 year or say 5 years. So, you have a long term plan, you have a short term plan and so on. So, be specific on the timeline or the deadline of the project. Moving further, we will discuss what is management by objective and how did the concept of management by objective has evolved, who has given this terminology of MBO and what is its relevance, how it is relevant in the present management context and how it will help the business to improve. So, management by objective is a comprehensive managerial system that integrates many key managerial activities in a systematic manner and that is consciously directed towards the effective and efficient achievement of organizational and individual objectives. This definition has been given by Harold Kunz and Heinz Weyrich, and it was outlined by Peter Drucker in 1954 in his book The Practice of Management. So, the word has emanated from the definition of Peter Drucker in the book Practice of Management. MBO is a process where the goal of the organizations are defined and conveyed by the management to the members of the organization with the intention to achieve each objective collectively. It aims to increase organizational performance by aligning the goals and subordinates objectives throughout the organization. Ideally, employees get strong input to identify their objectives, timelines for completion, etc. So, what is the nature and purpose of management by objective? Let us discuss each one of them. MBO is concerned with goal setting. So, the major objective is to set goals and plan for individual managers and their or units, their individual units. So, MBO's main purpose is to set goals, can be both qualitative and quantitative goals. The essence of MBO is a process of joint goal setting. So, MBO is not an individual goal setting, but it is a joint goal setting between supervisor and the subordinate. So, collectively supervisors and subordinates, they join together to form or to set goals. Managers, as we discussed in the previous section, that decision making should always be in consensus, which would eliminate any kind of error. So, joint goal setting would give diverse perspectives to the setting of goals. Managers work with their subordinates to establish performance goals that are consistent with higher organizational objectives. So, MBO helps to clarify the hierarchy of objectives. So, you can give priority to which objective is to be given more weightage as a series of well defined means and ends chain, and MBO embodies a process that supports and facilitates teamwork. So, basically MBO will be successful when there is an effective teamwork. So, teamwork is the fundamental backbone of achievement of management by objective. Upward communication must be used to ensure that each executive has a clear picture of where the organization is moving towards and how his or her objectives, personal objectives fit into the entire organizational objective. So, every manager should be clear with the goals which has been allocated to him and how his involvement is associated with organizational goal. So, this will give a greater intrinsic motivation for a person to perform towards the targets which have been assigned to him. MBO relies on a process of self control and seeks to achieve alignment between individual needs and the goals of the organization. So, there should be a kind of consensus between individual goal or alignment of individual goal with organizational goals. MBO thus seeks to meld individual freedom and responsibility with organizational performance and results. It rests on a higher concept of motivation and human behavior. It is the underpinning of a highly spirited organization. So, further if we decide, moving further, we will see how MBO, cascading of organizational vision, goals and objectives is done in MBO, specific objectives for each member, participative decision making and explicit time period, performance evaluation and feedback. So, the MBO principles rest with cascading goals, objectives, specific or objective specificity of objectives of each member, participative decision making, explicit time period, performance evaluation and feedback is the principle of management by objective. The benefits of MBO: better managing. How we can procure the benefits of MBO? It will help in better management of objectives or better managing, clarity in organizational actions, personal satisfaction, development of skills and abilities, basic organizational change. So, it helps in management, better management of planning, organizing, directing and controlling, clarity in organizational actions. As we discussed now, the every manager will be very clear with what are the objectives, what are the goals assigned to him, and this will, when the individual manager is clear with the goals assigned to him, So, he will be more involved in the task, in his in the assignments, and there would also be a sense of satisfaction, because he is clear with that his involvement will lead to greater organizational good. Development of skills and abilities, and there will also be more improvement in the skills and objectives, skills and abilities of the individual, because there would be a sense of commitment towards his goal, and he would also try to develop his skills competency level to be more engaged with the goal. And this is also this MBO principle will also help during the change initiatives, organizational change initiatives. Encouragement of commitment, this will in large, it will help in commitment, increasing level of intrinsic sense of motivation of an individual, because there is a sense of belongingness. When you see the clarity in the goals and you see the what is the benefit or reward associated with the goal accomplishment, so that would give a sense of inner satisfaction, a sense of intrinsic motivation and involvement and engagement in the task. Development of effective control, the person has more control over the goals, because he knows that wherever there is a defect, he has to take a corrective action, so that the end result is always good, end result is always beneficial. We will be discussing about some examples in the later discussions, where we can see MBO is implemented in quality improvement projects, in cost reduction, cost minimization, improving efficiency, improving level of customer satisfaction. So, these goals can be attained if there is an involvement of the personnel involved in various activities. And another pillar of success of MBO is improved communication. If there is no communication between the manager and the supervisor, there would be the collective goal achievement cannot be attained. So, the communication has to be very efficient within the members who are working for collective goal attainment. Appraisal is another objective like performance, because the group of individuals are associated in one task. The accomplishment of task is associated with how individuals are involved. So, there has to be an effective performance appraisal of the people who are working in a group, their commitment towards the goal achievement as well as their quality involvement can also be appraised through performance appraisal. So, appraisal will be more objective and specific rather than qualitative. So, with this I would like to conclude the session here. Further we will discuss about the limitations of MBO and failure to teach MBO philosophy, like difficulty in goal setting, resentment by subordinates, emphasis on short term goals, inflexibility, these are certain limitations. Failures to give guidelines to goal setters, lack of interpersonal skills of managers, these are certain impediments in executing management by objectives. Failure to teach the philosophy of MBO to the participants in the process. So, with this I would like to conclude the session here. Thank you.